Chapter 6. The movement-activated light brightened up the hallway as Zack walked towards his apartment. He walked in, then kicked the door closed with the heel of his foot as he headed towards the living room. Holovision on. The 3D image appeared in front of Zack, and the weather was the first thing he saw. Zack poured himself a whiskey and fell asleep on the settee watching reruns of the Last Laugh comedy show. Within moments he was back at home in Kistowich. His mum was making breakfast, his father was struggling to put a tie on, and his brother came up behind Zack and ruffled his little brother's hair, and then stole a sausage from his plate. It was a normal day, just like every day. The radio was playing Happy Birthday. He finished his breakfast, went to put his pot in the sink and ran the water to rinse out the bowl. After the bowl was clean, he turned the tap to switch off the water. But the water didn't stop. Instead, it slowed down to a trickle, then a slow-motion drip. The voices of his family had turned from the breakfast conversation to slow-motion murmurs, at almost a quarter of the speed that he was used to hearing. That drip, he watched it patiently, deliberately willing it to stop. It got larger and larger, getting heavy enough to fall off the lip of the tap, and the surrounding sounds, the chatter of a morning breakfast, the clanking of cutlery against crockery as the food was being eaten, slowed down to a low, deep lull. The drop, heavy now, fell with a resounding splash that broke the silence, and another formed. Another drop, faster and larger than the first one, except it didn't fall. It just kept increasing, getting fuller and fuller. Within seconds, the drip was no longer recognisable and was the size of an enormous balloon. Zack watched in disbelief. This wasn't possible. Then the weirdest thing happened. The balloon water bubble exploded, covering Zack, and the tap gushed water at high speed and sprayed everywhere. Panicking, he tried to turn the tap off, but the water stream just got stronger. Just when he thought it couldn't get any more dangerous, the metal tap rose high above the sink, pulling the fixings off the sink and taking copper tubing with it. The copper tubing got longer and longer, and the tap on the end reached the kitchen ceiling. As the ceiling and tap touched each other, the copper tubing instantly changed to a flexible hose and twisted and turned with the pressure, spraying jets of water all over the kitchen, whipping the hose about uncontrollably. Zack turned around to look at his family for help, but they were just sitting at the table eating their breakfast, completely oblivious to what was going on. His legs felt something wet. Looking down, he saw the water had reached his waist. A gentle breeze blew across his face, and he looked up to see that the walls of the house were pulled apart as if ripped by the force of a hurricane. But there was no sign of wind, no swaying trees, no ripples in the water, just a gentle breeze on his face. The water filled up the outside of the house, the street, and the neighbourhood with frightening speed. With ferocity and force, the walls were torn apart, and the water took the tiled wall, sink, and cupboards. His mum, dad and brother still sat at the breakfast table, floated off down the street, completely unaware of what was going on. Zack tried to call out to his family, but the sound of the water drowned out his cries, and they were too far away to hear. It wasn't long before they were all out of sight, and all he could hear was the water and a faint beeping noise. Wading through the water in the direction that the living room had gone, desperately trying to find his family, he slipped on something and fell flat on his face on a settee, which looked just like the one in his flat, banging his head on the arm. His head pounding, the beeping got louder. He looked around and watched as the house around him and all the water just vanished. Everything went white. Zack woke up.